All right, I think we're ready to go ahead and make our first Java program today. So um, keep things easy. We're not going to use any special software. We're just going to code online. So I'm going to use this website called CodeHS. It's codehs.com. And they have an environment where we can type our code and run it, see it right in the browser. So it doesn't matter if you're still just working on a Chromebook. All right. So I have made accounts for everybody in the class already. And so all you have to do is log in. And assuming you are already logged in with your Google account, just click Login with Google. And you will get taken to a screen that looks something like this. You'll see lots of stuff over here, assignments and gradebook and all that kind of stuff. I am not going to use any of these features. Honestly, I think a lot of the problems on this website are kind of boring, and sometimes the site can get a little bit cumbersome to use. So instead, I'm just going to use the sandbox feature. And the sandbox is where you can make your own programs that do whatever you want. So I'm going to hit sandbox, and I'm going to go to create new program. And I think a typical first program in most languages is something called Hello World, but I'm going to make it a little bit better. And I'm going to call it Hello User. So we're going to make this a little bit interactive. And I think at this point I'm starting to get in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and X out. And so I'm going to click Create Program. And in here, we're just going to go to Java, and I want to hit Java, and we'll pick the main one that'll give us the best template for starting out. All right. Get rid of that again. All right. So we get this starter template, and it's got a function called main, a method called main inside of it, and you see this class and static void. And for now, I want you to not even worry about what any of that means. Okay, so Java is going to be a little bit different than a lot of programming languages you may have learned. Like if you learn something like Python, you don't have to see all this stuff to write a program that does something. But don't worry about that for now. And if you have no experience, that's fine as well. So we're just going to learn Java like inside out. So I'm just going to write code in between these two curly braces, and we're going to focus on how this code works. And then all of this stuff, what do all these words mean? We'll worry about that at a later date. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and hit Tab. And I'm going to type a line called system out println, and that stands for print line. And I'll just say hello world. And then we'll go to the end of the statement, and we'll put a semicolon. So Java is very, very picky. It is case sensitive. The spelling has to be exact. Right, the things you want printed are in parentheses, and the actual letters you want printed and symbols you want printed are inside quotation marks. So we'll run this. And so this is a program that prints the statement hello world on the screen. All right, so we can do a little bit better here, make it a little more interesting. So instead of just saying hello world, I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to go ahead and store my name in it. So with this line of code does nothing visually on the screen. Instead, what it does is it allocates a section in the computer's memory that is intended to hold a string, which just means a sequence of characters. And so that we can refer to it later, it calls it name, right? So basically, right, the letters the letters that make John Cooper are stored in the computer's memory, and if I want to access it later, I can refer to it by that identifier. So I'm going to change this, and let's do hello plus name. Let's watch what happens. Okay. All right, so it looks pretty good. One thing I want you to see is, right, we'll go through this statement, and you can see that the word hello is in quotation marks, so it literally prints it on the screen, and the comma. And when I exit the quotation marks, I use a plus operator. And since the identifier name is not in quotation marks, Java knows that must be a variable, and it prints the contents of that variable container, and so it puts John Cooper on the screen. Something else you'll see, right? I put spaces around the plus sign. That's just for readability of my code, right? I think most people, I definitely do think this starts to get cluttered and it's hard to read. So if I put spaces around that, that's easier. But it doesn't put any spaces in the output. So if I want to have a space after that comma, right, I actually need to go ahead and type it right there. All right, I'm going to pause for 1 sec. Okay, I'm back, and let's see. All right, so now we've got to ask a question. Okay, but I think we can do a little bit. Let's check some other variable types. So let's suppose I wanted to print my age on the screen. Now my age is really, it's numeric. It's not a string variable because it has a value to it, numeric value to it. So what I'm going to do is say the kind of information I want to store, and my age will always be an integer, right? It's always going to be a positive, just a regular number, no decimal. And so I'll say int age equals, and I'll say 49. And so I can do system.out.println. I see you are. I'm going to move that over a little bit. And I think I don't need, this is the name of the file I'm working on. I don't need that much room for that. So I see you are, right? And ending my quote, age, and I'll say plus years. And run it. Oh, forgot my semicolon at the end. Okay, and you can see here the 49 and the years are mushed up. Well, that's because I need a space right inside the quotation marks. All right, so let's go a little bit further. Okay, rather than have things like name and age hard coded into the program like this, let's see if we can get the computer to ask us questions. So at this point, I want you to understand that don't memorize anything I'm doing. Okay, some of the stuff I'm going to do right now, I literally had to Google, 20 minutes before I started making this video. The code you use often, you memorize, and the code you don't, you know it exists, and you get good at reading documentation. Okay, and you look it up as needed. So the first thing I'm going to do is write a line. It's import java.util.scanner with capital S, put my semicolon. And what this is doing is there's some code that we can use to get user input, like from the keyboard. And this is basically a description of where it is installed on our computer when we put Java on, or when we put Java on the computer. So we'll get more into what this line means later as well. All right, so I'm going to make a scanner object that can read input. And so I'll say scanner input equals new scanner system.in. Okay. Again, this is just type this one today. Okay. There's a lot going on here that I don't want to explain, the new and the syntax to it. But it should be, the usage of this scanner should be easy. All right. So for my name here, what I'm going to do is instead of having it just have my name stored, I'm going to make it do input.next line. And let's run this program and watch what happens. Okay, so I've got a blinking cursor here. it looks like I can type at it. So what it's doing is it is waiting for me to type something. So when I hit enter, now it says, hello, John Cooper, and it finishes. So that was kind of weird because it didn't give me an input prompt. So what I really should do ahead of it is just something like system out.println, and then let's say, what is your name? Try it again. Keep forgetting those semicolons. Okay. And we get there. And you know what? I should fix this too. Let's punctuate. Looks better. Okay. So let's try to have it do an input for the age as well. All right. So I'm going to just copy this. I'm going to try this. And so we have an error here. And it says string cannot be converted to an int. And so kind of, these error messages, always read them, even if they seem cryptic at first. The more you read them, the more you'll start to decipher what you actually need to do to fix them. All right. But whenever you do input using next line, it is always a string. All right. It always means it's a sequence of characters because you can type whatever you want at the prompt. And in Python, or in Java, excuse me, if this is a sequence of characters, right, you can't store it in a memory location that was designated to hold an integer, a number. And so what I'm going to do, again, this is don't memorize this. This whole thing and wrap it in parentheses around this integer.parseInt. And what it's going to do is, assuming we only typed in numeric characters, it will turn it into a number for us so it can get stored in this age variable. Okay, John. And did put a prompt on there. All right, so let's play just a little bit more. Right, just to show you some things computers can do. So I'm going to ask another question. What do you like to do for fun? And so we'll make a variable name to store it. And so I'll say string activity, and it's input next line. Okay, so now we got it. And instead of just printing something like, printing, I see you like to snowboard, what I'm going to do is have the computer act conditionally. So I'm going to say if activity contains, and I'll say the word camp, curly brackets. And you can see I type my curly brackets and I'm indented again. And so this is going to cut. What it's going to do is it's going to look in our response, and if that response contains the word camp, we can make it do something specific. So I'll say system.out.println. Say I'm quite Outdoorsy 2. And then else, we'll just do it like a generic response. Let's say that sounds very interesting. So let's see what happens. Always forgetting my semicolons. There we are. Java is case sensitive. I need to capitalize that N or that L. Okay, so run it again. Making a good amount of errors just so you can learn the common mistakes, right? And then because it found the phrase, right, the string camp inside our response, it did that. Otherwise, it would have said that sounds very interesting. One last thing is like, let's suppose we want to branch down more than 2 branches. Well, I can just add another little section in here and I'll say else if. And let's just, we'll do our response and we'll do our condition. So in parentheses here, I'll try activity.contains, and I'll say cooking. They might say cook different ways. We'll just say cook like that. That way they can say cooked, cooking, I like to cook, and we'll do a response. And so we'll just let the response be, you're making me hungry. All right, and so let's make sure, there's one last run to make sure everything works. Okay, and my program is done. One last thing for closure. And this really isn't going to affect us when working online, but all right, when we make a scanner for input, really, when the program ends, I'm supposed to do input.close. And just so it's no longer paying attention. All right, I don't think it matters when we're working in online like this, but just for properness. All right, so I am going to stop here. And what I want you guys to do is just go back to Classroom, look at the assignment description, and I want you to follow along and make this program working exactly the way it is. And then in the assignment, they're going to tell you to add some more features to it. And then you're going to turn in your completed code to me. All right, so I'm going to stop this video now.